right? Well, it's been a busy week at St. Michael's. And I did not prepare for the sermon in the way that I normally do. I'll tell you how I normally prepare, and that's that I look at the scriptures and I look up what I feel like if there's something I don't understand or some angle I want to explore, and then I'll just soak in it a lot. And then something comes out. Something always comes out. I didn't do that this week, but I did it for a specific reason, not just because it was busy. And that's based in what happened last Sunday, a week ago exactly. After church, we had our church service. We went back to the parish hall for brunch, and we enjoyed some good food together and some coffee together. And we were about 30 minutes, 45 minutes into that. My son, Asher, was here with us, and we had a family come in. And Hazel Ann brought them back, and a few others brought them back to say, hey, you might want to talk to Father Ryan. And so they did, and the English was not good. And my temptation is just to kind of start speaking Spanish or whatever, just to see if something can connect. And it turns out this family was Romanian. And that was a new one for me. But they did speak some Spanish, which is an interesting, map nerd fact. Romanian, the language, is more similar to French and Spanish than it is to the nations around it, the Slavic nations around it. So they did have some Spanish, but there was just enough English there to where we were able to sort of figure out they had a bill that they were worried about paying, that they didn't have any money to pay it. They couldn't work. They were having trouble getting work. And it was a father and a mother and two girls, a 10-year-old girl and a 2-year-old girl. Just the sweetest family, and they were just really doing their best to get from one day to the next, to put some food in the kids' stomachs and to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And through some conversation and some false starts, we were able to figure out that the way that we could help them the most would be to accompany them to Walmart to get some food, and also to help them get a new set of tires. They did have a vehicle, they had a minivan, and the father explained to me that he had work he could do in Springfield, but he can't get there because his tires are just shredded. He showed them to me, and they were just, any moment, like one of these tires is going to pop or just fall apart. So I talked my son into abandoning whatever activities we were in at the moment. We were pretty much shutting things down anyway, and especially when it's anything car related. Hey, we're going to get some new tires for these folks. He's like, yeah, I'm on board. Let's do that. And he had fun kind of getting to know this family and feeling like he could be of some service too. So he and I got in our car, and this family didn't really know how to get to the Walmart. So he said, okay, follow us. We'll just get on I-70 to 40 and all that. Just follow us. And Asher's job, he took it upon himself to make sure that they were in our rear, that he could see, okay, Dad, I'm going to make sure that they're right behind us and that we don't lose them. Because we weren't going very fast. I didn't want to go very fast. I was worried about those tires. But we had to stop at Walmart. I thought maybe we could get the tires at Walmart because they do tires. But we got in there and they said, oh, our next appointment is Tuesday. And it's like, it's been a while since I've tried to do tires at Walmart, but since when are the appointments 2 days out, right? But they are. So like, okay, well, you need food, so let's get food. And so the girls went around and with the shopping cart, and Asher and I hung out with the dad, and we chatted to kind of catch up with them on the other side. And so they got about $100 worth of food, like maybe a week's worth, and we went through the checkout lines for that. And in the meantime, the little girl, this 2-year-old, was just sitting in the cart, and she was just clutching her bag of goodies. She had a bag of some kind of dessert, and it was this really shiny, pretty package, and she was just like, oh, this is mine. And Asher kept trying to pull other things out of the cart to hand her that to see if she would hold that instead, and she's like, nope, I have what I need right here. And even though it really was just a toddler holding something shiny and developing this emotional attachment to a package, there seemed to be something deeper going on there too. That there was a sense, even in a toddler, that any food is precious. So we got through the line, and while we were waiting for them to fill up their cart, I was able to make a phone call to this tire shop in Midtown that's not far from where we live that had been good to us in the past, and they had used tires that were good prices. And I looked it up, and they're open on a Sunday afternoon. I'm like, what do you know? I called over. They said, yeah, come right on in. We can get you 2 tires, used tires for that van for $160 right now. So I'm like, oh, okay. So we got our food, we got that into the van, and I said, okay, follow me to Midtown. I'm sure that after like 10 or 15 minutes, they're like, where are they taking us? We're just going all over the city on these thrashed front tires. Are we even going to make it? And I worried about that too. And Asher the whole way was making sure they're right behind us. And we got to the tire shop, and there's no real story to tell. We just pulled in. They said, yeah, we have the tires here, $160. You can use the discretionary fund. And part of the sermon can just be a report to remind St. Michael's that it's good to have some money in that discretionary fund. There wasn't much more than 160, but there was enough to cover them for these tires so that he could work, so that they could get where they need to go. And it's a pretty unremarkable story, except that after it was done and Asher and I got back into the car, he and I were able to follow up on a conversation that we'd had about confirmation and about, it's like, oh, when I'm 12, I want to get confirmed, and and am I going to get some kind of cool cross I can wear or something when I'm confirmed? And we talk about all of the sacraments and all these things. And I was able to kind of follow up that conversation by saying, all that stuff is good. All the things we do here in this room, the sacraments, the Eucharist, and the baptism, and the music and singing and the reading and the preaching, right? I mean, preaching's okay. But it's all good. It's all good. But this here, at this tire shop, this is what it's about. And if this doesn't support that, then we should quit. We should leave and lock the doors and say, forget it. And I specifically did not sort of soak in the gospel this week to prepare for this sermon, because there's a part of me that says, I don't care what it says. Yes, of course I care about the gospel. Of course I care what Jesus said. But there's a part of me that said, no matter what we quote Jesus saying in this service, it's got to point to that tire shop. It's got to point to the grocery store. If it doesn't, then we're wasting our time. And there's so many more ways to bless people. There's so many more ways to do good. Obviously, it's not just a tire shop and a grocery store. And it's not just material goods and material needs. And in fact, Jacob, in his story, in the Stairway to Heaven and all these things, not Led Zeppelin, I'm talking about Jacob in his vision. Jacob is the grandson of Abraham. And we see God repeating over and over again with each new generation, he's saying, do not forget the point. And in all of this story and all of the words that it takes to get it out, there is one little nugget in the middle that we can just blow right past. But let's not do that. Because it says, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south and all the families of the earth. And you're like, oh, right. It's just one more affirmation that Jacob is going to be blessed and you're going to be rich and you're going to have all of these descendants. Good for you. And all the families of the earth shall be what? You guys have it? I can wait. Blessed in you and in your offspring. That's a quick pivot, and we miss it if we're not paying attention. And all the families of the earth shall be blessed in you and your offspring. Jacob forgot it. The descendants of Jacob forgot it. We forget it. What are we doing here? If not for that grocery store and that tire shop. And it's a reminder to me of something that's become more and more impressed upon my heart when we look at Genesis. This is Torah, this is law. And we read Paul, we have the letters. We read Matthew, we have the gospel. And when you look at the Bible, And we see law, writings, prophets, gospels, letters. That kind of describes the Bible from beginning to end. And we as Christians put a natural focus on the Gospels, right? That's why I stand over here. I'm going to stand right in the middle of the room and read the Gospel to show you that this is the center point. This is the main thing that drives us. And that's good and that's right. But there's something sitting right at the middle of that list, you noticed. I list 5 things: law, writings, prophets, gospels, letters. What's actually in the center of that list? Prophets. And prophets say a lot of things. There's Isaiah, Jeremiah. You know, Jeremiah is technically the longest book in the Bible by word count. We don't realize that. We think it's the Psalms, but it's Jeremiah. They have a lot to say about a lot of stuff. But when you boil it down, if you force them to give you the elevator pitch, I think they would say, hey, your focus on religion is choking out the blessing. You're looking at all this stuff, all of the trappings, and you're forgetting that one word that's at the heart of the message, and that is blessed, that all the families of the earth shall be blessed by you and your descendants. That's the point. So even though there's a part of me that wants to look at that gospel and say, yikes, I really need to address this. I need to, the weeping and the gnashing of teeth and the weed and the wheats. And I'll just give you this really quick. Ask me again at brunch if you want more. But that the wheat and the weeds are both within each of us. And that God lets that grow up until a point where we can be fully purified. And the weeds within us can be extracted and burned. And the wheat within us can be harvested. If you want to take issue with me on that interpretation, you are welcome to do so afterwards. Because we're always in danger of getting distracted from why we're here. And just to close, I want to recap one conversation, not even recap, just mention one conversation I had with a parishioner this week, where it was re-emphasized to me just how much our doctrine, our theology, our Bible interpretation is driven by anxiety. And we talked about that in our class this morning at 9 o'clock too. That there's no reason to believe that God expects us to be motivated by that. It says, cast all your cares, cast all your anxiety on God because God cares for you in 1 Peter. No, do not worry about tomorrow. Don't be anxious. Don't worry. Don't think that if I get this wrong, if I mess this up, if we sing the wrong hymn, if we read the wrong reading, if I give the wrong interpretation of my sermon, that God is going to be angry and want to punish us. It's anxiety. But if there is one reason to be anxious, I think the prophets have nailed it. And that is if we are not being a blessing to the world. Is the world different because we're here? Is independence different because we gather in this room from 10 to 11 on a Sunday? I think so. But if we're not asking ourselves that question, maybe we should be anxious. Maybe we should be thinking a little bit harder about the weeds that are among the wheat. Maybe we should be thinking harder about the flesh and the spirit that Paul talks about in his letter. But not because we're believing the wrong things or singing the wrong things or reciting the wrong things. Is the world better because we're here right now? Let's never stop asking ourselves that question. Amen.